Hi everyone, and welcome to our first pensions industry podcast. We're calling it Talk Pensions and Benefits UK, something that has been in the works for a number of months now, but we're finally getting around to do it. And I'm very excited to welcome our first guest, Andrew Marson, an industry leader with 30 years experience in the pensions industry. That's everything from administration through to scheme governance, management, trustee secretarial work. Andrew, is there anything that you haven't done within the pensions game? The list goes on. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That was a great intro. Yeah, it's great to be here, isn't it? I'm loving these new ways of getting communicated and staying in touch with each other, and it's a bit of an honour, really, isn't it, to be on your inaugural podcast? So no, I'm really excited to be here, and it's a busy time in our pensions admin world, isn't it? So we've lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about. No, you're quite right. I mean, it's great to have you on anyway, but I'm really excited to finally take the plunge. Like I say, this has been something that I've been wanting to do, and I've been making some very very amateurish excuses for not doing it. Oh, I'm too busy, this, that, and the other. So I'm really, really excited to get this done. And like you say, it's been a very challenging year, a very interesting year. But it's perhaps created solutions to problems that we didn't know. It shifted the industry in different ways. And for all of those watching and listening, Andrew and I have already had a conversation about some of the changes that have been great to see. So I'm really, really interested to hear what he's got to say, and for him to share his insights, that have been developed. So Andrew, over to you. Let's kick it off. What's been going on with you? Where are you at the moment?
Well, in more recent times, Tom, what I've been doing is so I've been having some great times, some great assignments in interim work. Mm-hmm. And what that's done is so that it's sort of then across the sort of experiences that I've had in my career now, I can tick off both in-house and TPA. I know DB and DC, private sector, public sector, operations, transformation work, and strategic work in there as well. So there's always something else to learn, isn't it? There's always something else new to do. And so that's been a great opportunity for me. And now with the nature of the work, I've started to get my own business going as well. I'm not going to sit on my hands, and now concentrating on helping other pension funds and indeed pensions administrators with their career progression ambitions. So it's a good time, and I think it's in many ways, it has been a very difficult time for us, but in the same breath, I think there are new opportunities emerging as well. So I think it's an exciting time.
Excellent, and that's a great place for us to start. You mentioned that you're getting this pensions administration matters business up and running, and this all started between you and I, because I love posting on LinkedIn. You love posting on LinkedIn. I think there's been some excellent feedback to some of the work you're doing. So, are you able to tell us a little bit more about what you are doing with that? Some of the successes perhaps you've had recently, and where you're looking to take that over the next couple of months and into 2021?
Yeah, well, it's really in response to where I see some of the biggest challenges that we've got in the industry at the minute. And my niche, the area that I love working in most is pensions administration. That's where I get the most joy out of the work that I do. And it was really in response to the big key challenges, because the number one for me, I think really over the next, it's going to be at least 12 months, I see, is the well-being of staff, mm-hmm. The well-being of people. And I think now even more so than ever, we need to be able to helping people, keeping them healthy, keeping them fit, finding ways in which people can keep their energy levels high, staying motivated and having a clear purpose. And what I'm doing with Pensions Administration Matters is to really highlight those particular areas and champion those areas, so that it puts it more in people's profiles, and everybody can be able to comment or respond on it, and really get it up there as a discussion topic, because I think that's a really important area for us.
Sure. And, from a personal standpoint, I couldn't agree more in terms of, well-being and it's great to see so many companies actually giving that the time that it deserves, the investment that it deserves. So that's an excellent point you've just made there. So, from your side of things then, what do you feel is a good kind of strategy or a good initiative for some places or some employers to take on, given what we've been through, and staff going from doing a pensions administration job in an office to then doing it remotely? You've then got senior administrators doing their roles, checking their roles. You've got team managers and team leaders, obviously trying to remotely manage people. So are you able to give any kind of, tips or hints or bits of advice that you would personally recommend that might be worth looking at in the future?
Well, I think it's time for us to think a little bit differently about, if you think about as an individual level, thinking about their career.
Yeah.
I think it's the days of the sort of the annual appraisal. I think those days are numbered, if not gone. And I think the interaction between people within teams has to be perhaps a little bit more structured, a bit more organised, but more regular, just to make sure that we stay in touch with people. But at an individual level now, I think, in terms of career development and career progression, I think it needs more careful planning, and you need to perhaps take a longer term view of things, almost like where I am now, and I think it places a lot more onus on personal responsibility for it. So sort of the different things that I'm talking to individuals about now, in terms of where they are in their careers. Well, when it comes to your next stage of development, what sort of information are you collecting now, so that when you're ready, when your ambitions are that I want to make that next move, what can you present in terms of data that you've collected, progress that you have made? And it doesn't have to be about, well, at the beginning I was doing 10 of these things a day, and with my skills development, with the training that I've done, developing my technical expertise, I can have 15. It's not about necessarily productivity. It's more about how have you manage your daily routine, or how do you make sure that you are sustainable on a day-to-day basis, and how you are making yourself still being visible to your team, to your manager, so that they are still thinking about you when opportunities come along. How do I get noticed? Because if all people see of you is this little thumbnail of a screen, what is it that you're going to do so that you're in people's minds, and not just in the minds of perhaps your line manager, but also how are you going to get noticed when recruitment consultancies are looking for that next person with the talent that they need for the roles that they see? So I think it's really important about, well, how does your social media profiles look like? Because you can bet your bottom dollar these days that every recruitment consultant and every employer, they will Google candidates to see what's out there, and that will make a difference to their chances when any opportunity comes along.
Sure. No.
So it's really about how are you going to stand out as well, because the opportunities are there. We've talked about the industry. It's a buoyant industry. The vacancies and the opportunities are there, but actually the competition is really fierce as well. So how are you going to stand out from the crowd? Because it's the research shows it's like you've got less than a minute to make the impact that you need when somebody's reading your CV, and even in your interview, with the body language that you use in interview, even more so in video these days, you've probably got 30 seconds to make the right first impression. And that's not something we practice every day. So that's not necessarily a skill that you can just roll out anytime it's needed.
I think that's an excellent point, or a number of excellent points, because we see it in the sense of, I've been recruited within pensions for the last 10 years, and we almost daily get the usual kind of, approaches where someone says, right, I'm a senior administrator and I want to go up to that next level, and it's, for us, we obviously are asking those qualifying questions. Have you looked internally? Have you got any idea as to what that next level looks like? Do you want to manage a team? Do you want to move away from that? Maybe look at something a bit more technical. Do you want to make that shift from perhaps a TPA to in-house, vice versa? But I think you've made some excellent points there in terms of how do you come across an interview? Do you sell yourself? Does your LinkedIn profile sell yourself? Have you got information on there? We've even heard, thankfully not too frequently, but we've even heard of some firms investigating Instagram and Facebook profiles.
Absolutely.
You may have that as private. That is your private life. That shouldn't play into a professional setting. But if you've got a public profile that can be viewed and a few interesting pictures, shall we say, or maybe you've made a few interesting posts about your current employer, or anything along those lines, that could be the difference between getting your dream job and not getting your dream job. So I think a lot of the points that you've made are really, really valid, and hopefully, a few people listening have taken those on board. What would you say would be the difference then from someone perhaps just starting their career within pensions and perhaps wants to make the move from, say, a pensions administrator to a senior pensions administrator, or a similar move that way, or compared to someone a bit further up the ladder, perhaps a manager moving up to a head of position or a director position? I mean, the advice that you've just given is pretty, transferable, for all of that.
Yeah.
But would you perhaps add any more to that the more senior that you become?
Well, I think the nature, we are quite a hierarchical industry, aren't we? We have how teams seem to be, continue to be structured these days around this, administrator, a senior, and team leader. That's, you can sort of see, well, what does my career path look like? And inevitably, as people want to take that next step in their career, the number of roles available in that next tier are ever decreasing. I think what sort of tends to change or should be changing as people develop through that, if you like, a traditional career route, is one that you're moving more from an operational and delivery type role, where your interaction was by and large with members, to becoming more, you're taking on leadership. And I think those are very different skill sets to learn. And anyone who can manage to continue to stay relevant in that they understand what's going on in the industry, they know how the service is delivered, but actually still be able to develop their people leadership skills and be able to communicate effectively with their peers, with their team, but also give them, keep them motivated, give people a sense of direction. I think is and looking for opportunities within existing roles where they might be able to get involved in a project, for example, and they could take leading roles in the project where it brings together people from different parts of the organization. That is one to really look out for, because there are always projects that are on the go. It's to say, well, okay, do you know what? I want to stick my hand up and I want to have a try at that, because that would be a good piece of development work for me. Because then later on, when you can perhaps competing with somebody who's already been in a leadership role for a couple of years, you can say, yeah, well, okay, I'm not going to try and pretend what I'm not, but actually I've had these experiences that demonstrate that I can do it. And I think there are plenty of organizations there that will use those as really good evidence so that then people can say, "Do you know what, we can see you've got the potential. You might not have been doing it full time, but we're happy and willing, prepared to take you on as you are, and we'll help you develop with your talent."
That's really interesting as well. And that leads on to my next question. And actually, my colleague Aaron was shared a post on LinkedIn that got a few people talking the other day, that was looking at the difference between working for a big firm, perhaps working for a smaller department or a smaller business. As we mentioned at the start of this, you've covered so many different roles in so many different types of firms. What advice could you give someone who perhaps is working for a large firm that may be becoming very, very good at a certain process, but may not have that spread? And likewise, maybe someone coming from a smaller firm as a Jack or Jill of all trades that wants to focus. Have you got any kind of advice or insights in that regard?
I think really I would encourage people to reflect on themselves. It's one of those, look at yourself in the mirror, metaphorically, and take the time where you're not distracted, and write down all of the things that you're good at, and write down all of the things that you love doing, and use those to shape where you think your career development looks. Because there are so many opportunities within pensions, and even more so within pensions administration, is that it's not about, almost this belief of, well, I need to go from admin to senior to team leader to admin manager. You don't have to do that. If you love the nuts and bolts of regulation, why not go and be a technical expert? Or if you love the cut and thrust of the daily routine, the day-to-day routines of staying on top of your work levels, then specialize in your operational management. Or I've even, you have cases where people say, well, I like the sort of work where it's relatively the same, because I can get in a bit of a routine. I feel like I'm really in the flow of it. I'm getting stuff done, but they might be quite small activities. And equally, there are people that say, do you know what, I love nothing more than when I'm trying to help this member with their retirement, and they've got such a complex history of which scheme they were in, their service history, and what's pensionable, what's not, and where their limits are, making sure that is absolutely spot on for that person. A really technical case is, is another type of role. So I think it's really, in a nutshell, really look for the role where you feel like you're going to get the most joy out of it.
Sure. No, absolutely fair comment. So, and I think that's one of the interesting things that we see on the other side of the fence. We speak to a lot of people who have taken the time to think of what they like to do, and likewise what they don't like to do. And we have those conversations where we start to assess what type of role they're going to be good for, likewise what type of firm. But likewise, there are some who perhaps haven't given it that thought, and have almost got in touch with us after a bad day or a bad week. You start to line up a couple of interviews, and then they start to realize, oh, actually, maybe I was a bit hasty. Maybe I should stick it out, or maybe I don't want to go in that direction. I want to go in that direction, which is absolutely fine. It's just making the right move rather than just taking the first thing that comes up. So, yeah, I think that's a great point.
Because I think really what I think is very tempting, and I think it happens a lot, is that when people are looking for a new role, their initial motivation is that they're not happy with the role that they're doing. And what can happen, what there is a high risk of happening, is that person will move into a new organization doing the same role. And really, it's only a matter of time before there's a strong chance that they're going to be unhappy in that role again and looking for another move. Whereas really, I think what the consideration, what the thought process needs to be about is, okay, I'm not happy with what I'm doing now. Why is that? And then understanding that, say, well, okay, where can I plug that gap? Where can I get that fulfillment in my role? And is it with the employer that I'm with, or does it mean that I have to go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, definitely. And again, the amount of people that we've spoken to that have been with the same employer for 10, 15, 20 years, but they, every 3, 4 years, for example, they're just changing roles slightly, changing department, changing responsibilities. Like you say, they're still getting the variety, but they also are comfortable knowing they understand the firm, they understand the values, they have built good relationships with different stakeholder groups, and have got those friendships there. You don't have to, like you say, you don't have to make that knee-jerk reaction and go somewhere else. You could stay within that firm and just shift around a little bit. So no, it's definitely worth kind of taking note of. And money is a similar one as well that we see, that I want more money, so I want to leave, because like you say, if you end up doing the same job for a different firm, you may love it, but equally you may become just as kind of disgruntled or disjointed or disengaged as you were originally. And it's the same with the money. You can move for an extra however much, but is that enough to kind of do the same job or do a similar job? That attraction almost wears off after a while, and then invariably we then have the same conversations again. So but then again, looking ahead, you mentioned well-being at the start of this. What other challenges, this was the other bit that I was really keen to discuss with you today, what other challenges do you foresee for the pensions administration world, or the pensions world in general, as we move into 2021 and beyond? What's the potential hurdles and pitfalls that may be coming up that it's worth taking a note of now?
Well, I'd love to be able to throw something completely new in and be that little bit different to say, I think this is the big challenge.
Yeah.
But realistically, and this, I have picked this up from feedback from some of my posts and polls as well, is that, do you know what? It's still going to be about data. In terms of the admin challenge. I think data and understanding what data we've got, understanding what data we need, and staying connected with members as they join and leave the schemes. I think that is really, it's going to continue to be one of the biggest challenge after the well-being of staff for the administration market. Because in public sector world, they've got the McLeod judgment to deal with. That's a big exercise. Many schemes are still in the middle of GMP reconciliation and rectification. Many schemes are starting or getting in the early stages of GMP equalization. So they're all dealing with these retrospective discrimination cases. And then as well, not very far away, schemes have got to be dashboard ready.
Yep.
So it's going to continue to be a big challenge for the administration world. I think if we're realistic, there could well be a bit of a capacity crunch that comes with this, because everybody wants and needs to do this all at the same time. So I think many firms will be talking to the clients about, do you know what, we really need to carefully plan this and get this all lined up, otherwise somebody's going to be disappointed. But as well, I think as well that there are opportunities emerging, particularly with technology, that I think can be available and used within our pensions admin space to really take some of the time and effort out of some of these data headaches.
And that's something over the coming weeks. We've got a few other conversations lined up around some excellent points that you've made there around well-being, around the use of technology. and a few other bits and pieces. So that's really, really interesting. So I suppose final question, or final kind of request for your insights. Let's say someone's listening to us right now. We've had a very turbulent year. Perhaps it's been a year of get your head down, be grateful that you've perhaps got a job, or be grateful to be where you're at. If they're planning to say January 2021 is the time where I'm going to start perhaps looking for something new, or perhaps we're talking, we're currently talking to a few hiring managers that are going to change up their team dynamic, or what have you. Any bits of advice that we haven't already covered? Any bits of insight that you can give in terms of how to start planning that now, or maybe a few little things that are worth thinking about now in anticipation for Q1 next year?
I think in terms of for individuals, I would say if you haven't got a really clear handle on your skills, your capabilities, and what your performance looks like, then start now. Start collecting it now. Get your journal out, and write down, not daily perhaps, but write down your experiences, write down your achievements. Because that will stand people in good stead when it comes to when those opportunities come along. And actually from time to time, because it's not something that we do very often in pensions, is just take a look back, have a stop, take a look back and recognize what you've done, because you've come a long way. Because it can feel a bit like you're on a treadmill some days, but that's the time where you say, you know what, I have come a long way, I have achieved a lot. And I think as well, what it is a time to do is that with this world, this environment that we're in now, is that actually look a bit wider, look a bit further, start thinking about the sorts of organizations that you might want to work with. So have a look at the firms that are out there, and they've or look to get connected with people that are within those firms, and start to have some engagement with them, start to have some conversations, because then you'll start to see what it's really like to work with that firm. What's their strategy? What are their values and beliefs all about? Because I think what we do have now is that with the technology, with the working from home, these restrictions that have forced us to change, I don't believe that geography is a barrier anymore. No. So people can look for roles within the same team, but in a different part of the business, or within the same, or within a different organization, but they just don't happen to have an office that is, commutable anymore, because actually the commute doesn't really matter. So I would be encouraging people to look for those opportunities wider than perhaps the more traditional world might have looked like.
Yeah. No, I think that's, the amount of conversations that we've had over the last 6-7 months with various kind of industries, various types of employers, big, small, that deal with pensions administration, consulting, sales, software. I think there is a significant majority who are less fussed by location. Now, if you can travel to the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week, realistically, you can work from home. So if you were living in London, no longer do you have to work in London. You could work in Reading, Birmingham, Bristol. There really is that barrier is really gone. And again, this is where I love LinkedIn, because we do it. I live on it, and as we mentioned earlier, you and I both love posting on it. If there's a particular type of firm that we want to work with or we want to engage with, the first step is interacting with them on something like LinkedIn, or follow their Instagram, follow their Facebook page, get to know them, get to know what their staff are saying, look at them on Glassdoor, understand that those firms that you may really want to work with may not be suitable. If you have sat down and really made an assessment of what you like and what you don't like, And likewise, there may be a few that you hadn't even thought of. And like you said, there may be a particular type of role that you haven't thought of, whether that's internally or externally. So, no, it's a fantastic insight. And like I say, hopefully there's a few people listening that may take that on board. And obviously, if you want to talk it through, either with a lowly recruiter like myself, or with the industry expert with Andrew here, then you know who to reach out to. So, any final comments from yourself?
No, thanks, Tom. No, I've had a great time. I hope I haven't gone on too much, but it's been good fun, and but some serious matters, and I think some really significant opportunities for people as well. So it's in that sense, in amongst all of this madness that's going on, it's there are some opportunities to take.
Brilliant. No, definitely. And what I'd love to do, so like I said at the start, this is our first of many. We've got a number of other conversations lined up over the next couple of weeks. But Andrew, I'd love to get you back on at some point next year, and we can see how the industry is evolving. Perhaps some of those unexpected challenges may have come up that we weren't expecting, and we can discuss them again then. But for now, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch up with you all again soon.